On July 4th, the veteran's dog led him to the Grand Canyon, a secret revealed that changed his life. Get ready for an Independence Day story that will completely transform how you see heroism, sacrifice, and the bonds that connect us across time. This is the extraordinary tale of a veteran whose service dog led him to an impossible discovery at the Grand Canyon on July 4th, unveiling a secret that had been hidden for decades and would change not just his life, but the lives of dozens of families across America. Before we begin this incredible journey into one of America's most sacred places and most hidden histories, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you'll want to witness every moment of what happens when a dog's instinct reveals what the canyon has been hiding since World War II. Marcus Rivera stood at the south rim of the Grand Canyon, the July 4th sun already fierce at 7 in the morning, painting the ancient rocks in shades of copper and gold that seemed almost too vivid to be real. His German Shepherd-Labrador mix, Ranger, sat beside him, alert despite the early hour, the dog's attention focused not on the breathtaking vista, but on something Marcus couldn't perceive. They'd driven through the night from Phoenix, Marcus unable to sleep anyway, plagued by the nightmares that always intensified around patriotic holidays when the fireworks would begin. Marcus had been back from Syria for 2 years now, medically discharged after an IED had taken most of the hearing in his left ear and left him with a traumatic brain injury that manifested in splitting migraines, memory gaps, and a constant sense of disconnection from the world around him. Ranger had been assigned to him 18 months ago, trained to detect the onset of his migraines, guide him through crowds, and provide deep pressure therapy during anxiety attacks. The dog had quite literally saved his life more than once, pulling him back from the edge of breakdown with an insistence that cut through the fog of PTSD. This trip to the Grand Canyon hadn't been planned. Marcus had been sitting in his apartment in Phoenix, dreading the July 4th celebrations, the inevitable fireworks that would send him spiraling when Ranger had begun acting strangely. The dog had brought Marcus his keys, then his hiking boots, then stood by the door whining with an urgency Marcus had never seen before. It wasn't Ranger's trained behavior for detecting a medical emergency. This was something else, something that reminded Marcus of how the bomb-sniffing dogs in Syria had acted when they detected something critical. So he'd packed the truck and driven north, Ranger calm once they were on the road, as if the dog knew exactly where they were going, even if Marcus didn't. It wasn't until they'd passed Flagstaff that Marcus realized Ranger was guiding him to the Grand Canyon, the dog getting agitated whenever Marcus considered taking a different route. Now, standing at the rim in the early morning quiet before the holiday crowds arrived, Marcus understood why Ranger had brought him here, to this specific spot. This was where his grandfather, Alejandro Rivera, had worked as a ranger from 1946 to 1981. Marcus had childhood memories of visiting, of his grandfather's stories about the canyon's secrets, though the details had faded with time and trauma. Ranger suddenly stood, his body tense with the alertness that meant he'd detected something significant. The dog moved along the rim trail, not wandering but purposeful, following something only he could sense. Marcus followed, trusting Ranger's instincts as he'd learned to do in the 18 months they'd been partnered. They walked for 20 minutes, past the crowds beginning to gather at the main viewpoints, past the gift shops preparing to open, to a section of trail that was older, less maintained. Ranger led him to a small brass plaque that Marcus had never noticed before, weathered and partially obscured by desert brush. He knelt to read it. Dedicated to the Silent Heroes Project Canyon Deep 1943-1945. In the depths we found heights A.R. Alejandro Rivera, his grandfather. Ranger wasn't done. The dog moved off the trail toward what looked like just another rock formation among thousands. But as Marcus followed, he realized there was a narrow path, almost invisible unless you knew to look for it. It wound down below the rim, not far, maybe 30 feet, to a small ledge that couldn't be seen from above. On the ledge was a metal door set into the rock face, painted to match the surrounding stone so perfectly that it was nearly invisible. Ranger sat in front of it, his signal that he'd found what he was looking for. Marcus's hands shook as he approached the door. There was no lock, just a handle that turned with difficulty, decades of desert dust making it resist. The door opened into darkness that his phone's flashlight barely penetrated. Cool air flowed out, carrying the scent of old paper and something else, something chemical. Ranger entered first, as he'd been trained to do in building searches. Marcus had to duck to follow, his 6-foot frame barely fitting through the entrance. Inside, the passage opened into a chamber carved from the rock, maybe 15 feet square, and everywhere, covering every surface, were photographs. But not just any photographs. These were aerial reconnaissance photos, the kind Marcus recognized from military briefings, but these were old black and white, showing landscapes he didn't immediately recognize. There were documents too, in English, Spanish, German and Japanese, maps with markings, lists of names, and in the center of the room a desk with a journal, leather-bound and worn. Marcus opened the journal, his grandfather's neat handwriting filling the pages. July 4th, 1943. They tell us we're photographers, mapping the canyon for tourist purposes. But Martinez and I know better. We're looking for something else. The Germans were here in 38, the Japanese in 40, both claiming to be tourists, both spending too much time in the restricted zones. Command believes they were looking for something, so now we look too. Marcus sat down hard on a dusty chair, Ranger pressing against his legs. His grandfather hadn't just been a park ranger. He'd been military intelligence, using his ranger position as cover. The journal continued. August 15th, 1943. We found it. The uranium deposits the Germans detected, richer than anything in Colorado or Canada, enough to change the war if the wrong hands claimed it. Washington wants it kept secret, even from our own atomic program. Too dangerous, too exposed. Better to let it sleep in the rock until the world is ready, if it ever is. Uranium. In the Grand Canyon. Marcus's mind raced. He knew there had been uranium mining in Arizona, but this was different. This was a massive deposit that had been deliberately hidden. He kept reading. September 6, 1945. The war is over. The bombs worked without our uranium, thank God. But the secret remains. Too many would kill for this knowledge. The Soviets have spies everywhere. So we become the guardians. 7 of us, all veterans, all rangers now. We'll watch, document, protect. The canyon keeps its secret, and we keep the canyons. 7 guardians. Marcus found their names listed. Alejandro Rivera, James Martinez, Robert Yazzie, William Chen, Samuel Cohen, Joseph Kowalski, and Thomas O'Brien. Different backgrounds, different ethnicities, united in a secret mission that had apparently continued for decades. There were surveillance photos from the 1950s showing Soviet tourists who were clearly intelligence officers, reports from the 1960s about Chinese nationals asking too many questions about geological surveys, documentation from the 1970s about corporate interests trying to gain mineral rights through shell companies, and then entries from the 1980s that chilled Marcus. March 15th, 1981. They know. Someone leaked. 3 of us are dead. Martinez in a car accident. Chen from cancer that came too fast. Cohen in a hiking mishap. Only Yazzie, Kowalski, O'Brien and I remain. We're moving the documentation, splitting it up. If something happens to me, Ranger will know. I'm training him, dogs always know. Ranger. Not his ranger, but another dog, decades ago. His grandfather had written about training a dog to find this place, to lead someone here if needed. Marcus found a photograph of his grandfather with a German shepherd that looked remarkably like the German shepherd part of his own ranger. The resemblance was too strong to be coincidence. A folder marked 1981 Final Report contained the full story. A corporation called Axiom Industries had discovered hints about the uranium deposit. They'd bribed, threatened, and ultimately killed to get information. The surviving guardians had gone into hiding, maintaining their watch but from a distance. His grandfather's last entry was dated July 3, 1981. Tomorrow is Independence Day, fitting that it might be my last. They're coming. I've hidden everything here, in the place only the dogs will remember. If my family finds this, know that I didn't abandon you. I was protecting you. The uranium must never be found. It's not just about the element anymore. It's about what surrounds it. We found other things in those depths. Things that shouldn't exist. Things that change our understanding of this place, this country, this world. The indigenous peoples knew. They tried to warn us. We should have listened. Marcus's hands trembled as he turned to the final section of documentation. These weren't surveillance photos or intelligence reports. These were archaeological findings, hidden within the uranium deposit. artifacts that didn't match any known Native American culture, writing that predated any known indigenous script, technology that shouldn't have existed. There were photographs of metallic objects embedded in rock strata that was millions of years old, crystalline structures that exhibited properties no one could explain, and repeated references to something called the vessel, a chamber deeper in the deposit that the Guardians had sealed after one exploration team had gone in and come out changed, speaking in languages they didn't know, drawing symbols that hurt to look at. Marcus understood now why this had been hidden. It wasn't just about uranium. It was about something that would fundamentally challenge humanity's understanding of its own history. Ranger barked suddenly, sharp and urgent. Footsteps on the path outside. Multiple people trying to be quiet. Marcus grabbed the journal and as many documents as he could stuff into his backpack. Ranger was already positioning himself between Marcus and the entrance, hackles raised. 3 men entered, dressed like tourists but moving like military. Marcus recognized the tactical formation immediately. "Mr. Rivera," the lead man said, "we've been waiting a long time for someone to find this place." "Axiom Industries?" Marcus guessed. The man smiled. "Axiom was just a front. We represent interests that transcend corporations. That uranium, and what's with it, belongs to humanity. Or to whoever can profit from it," Marcus countered. "The world needs energy, Mr. Rivera. Clean energy. That deposit could power the entire western United States for a century. Your grandfather and his friends had no right to hide it." "They had every right," Marcus said, backing toward the rear of the chamber where he'd noticed another passage. "Some things should stay hidden. Not anymore. We have the legal documents, the mineral rights, everything. This land was never properly incorporated into the national park. It's ours." Ranger growled, low and menacing. Marcus knew that sound. The dog was about to attack. In the confined space, it would be chaos. "Ranger, hold," Marcus commanded. Then, in Arabic, a language he'd learned in Syria that these men likely wouldn't know, he gave different commands. Ranger understood, had been cross-trained in multiple languages. The dog exploded into motion, not attacking but creating chaos, knocking over the nearest man, causing confusion. Marcus ran for the back passage, Ranger following after ensuring all 3 men were on the ground. The passage was narrow, barely wide enough for Marcus to squeeze through. He could hear the men recovering, shouting, following. But they were bigger, bulkier, having more trouble with the narrow space. The passage opened into a larger chamber, and Marcus stopped dead. This was the vessel the documents had mentioned. The walls were covered in symbols that seemed to move in his peripheral vision, that made his head hurt worse than any migraine. In the center was a structure that defied description, geometric but wrong, solid but somehow flowing, ancient but looking newly made. Ranger whined, pressing against Marcus's legs, clearly distressed. The dog's trained composure was cracking in the presence of whatever this was. Marcus heard the men getting closer. He had to make a choice. His grandfather and the other Guardians had chosen to hide this, to protect the world from it, but they'd also been killed for that choice. He looked at the symbols on the walls and suddenly, impossibly, understood them. Not the language, but the intent. They were warnings and instructions. Moving on instinct more than knowledge, Marcus touched specific symbols in sequence. The vessel responded, emanating a low harmonic that he felt in his bones. The walls began to glow with a soft blue light. The 3 men burst into the chamber and stopped, stunned by what they saw. "My God," one whispered. "It's real." "Stay back," Marcus warned. "You don't know what you're dealing with." "Neither do you," the leader said, raising a weapon. But Ranger was already moving, not attacking but running to the vessel, touching it with his nose. The harmonic changed, became almost musical, and then the chamber filled with light. When Marcus's vision cleared, the 3 men were on the ground, unconscious but breathing. Ranger stood by the vessel, which had changed. Where before it had been incomprehensible, now it looked almost ordinary. A metallic pod, clearly technological but somehow less alien. And standing beside it was a figure. Not quite human, not quite other. It looked like Marcus's grandfather, but younger, translucent, made of the same blue light that filled the chamber. "Marcus," the figure said in his grandfather's voice, "and you found it. Good. Grandfather? An echo, an imprint. The vessel records those who interact with it. Your grandfather was the first to fully activate it in 1981. It saved him in a way. His body died, but his knowledge, his purpose lived on here. What is this thing? A gift or a curse, depending on how it's used, left by visitors from elsewhere, elsewhen, a test for humanity. The uranium was bait, to see if we could resist the temptation of power. The 7 Guardians passed that test. They chose protection over profit. And now? Now it's your choice. The vessel contains knowledge that could transform your world. Energy without pollution, medicine without limits, travel without boundaries, but also weapons beyond imagination, power that corrupts, absolutely. Your grandfather chose to hide it until humanity was ready. The question is, are you ready now? Marcus thought about the world outside, the wars he'd fought, the damage he'd seen, the PTSD that plagued him and millions of other veterans. Were humans ready for this kind of power? No, he said finally. We're not ready. Maybe we never will be. The echo of his grandfather smiled. Then you've passed the test too. The vessel will hide again, deeper this time, but it will leave gifts. Small ones. Healings for those who suffer. Energy for those who need it. Knowledge for those who can use it wisely. You'll be the conduit, you and Ranger. I don't understand. You will. The canyon chose your grandfather, and through him, you. Through you, others. Not guardians anymore, but guides. Helping humanity move toward readiness, one person at a time. The figure faded. The vessel sank into the floor, which sealed over it as if it had never been. The symbols on the walls rearranged themselves into something that looked like natural rock formations. Within minutes, the chamber looked like nothing more than a natural cave. The 3 men began to stir. When they woke fully, they looked confused. "Where are we?" the leader asked. "How did we get here?" They had no memory of the vessel, of the chase, of anything beyond entering the first chamber. Marcus told them they'd been overcome by bad air in the cave, that he'd dragged them to safety. Ranger played along, acting like a friendly service dog rather than the tactical animal he'd been moments before. The men left, confused and empty-handed, their mission forgotten. Marcus and Ranger returned to the first chamber. The documents were still there, but they looked different now. Older, less significant. The journal was blank, except for a single entry. The canyon keeps its secrets. The secrets keep the canyon. The guardians become guides. The cycle continues. As they emerged into the July 4th sunshine, Marcus felt different. The constant pain in his head was gone. The disconnect from the world had been replaced by a connection to something larger. Ranger, too, seemed changed, more aware, almost wise. They stood at the rim as tourists gathered for the holiday celebrations, families taking photos, children pointing at the depths in awe, veterans like Marcus, wearing their service caps, remembering their own battles. An elderly Native American man approached, looking at Ranger with recognition. "You found it," he said. "It wasn't a question. You knew. My grandfather was one of the original 7, Robert Yazzie. We've been waiting for someone to find it, to make the choice. The canyon told us you'd come." "The canyon told you?" The man smiled. "The canyon tells many things to those who listen. It told your grandfather. Now it tells you. Listen." And Marcus did listen. For the first time since his injury, he could hear perfectly from both ears. But more than that, he could hear something else. A rhythm, a pulse, coming from the canyon itself. "There are others," the man said. "Other deposits, other vessels, other secrets, hidden across the country, across the world, waiting for guides to find them to make the choice. Your grandfather was one of many. Now you are too." He handed Marcus a card with nothing but a phone number. "When you're ready. When Ranger shows you the next one, call, we'll be waiting." The man disappeared into the crowd, leaving Marcus and Ranger alone at the rim. Fireworks were being prepared for the evening celebration. Normally, Marcus would be planning his escape, dreading the sounds that would trigger his PTSD. But now he felt only calm. The vessel had done something to him, healed something broken. Not just the physical trauma, but something deeper. A family approached. A veteran in a wheelchair, his wife, 2 young children. The veteran had the hollow look Marcus recognized, the 1,000-yard stare of someone lost in their trauma. Without thinking, Marcus reached out and touched the man's shoulder. A spark of that blue light passed between them, too quick for anyone else to see. The veteran blinked, his eyes clearing. I feel different. Better. What did you do?" "Nothing," Marcus said. "Just thanking you for your service." But he knew it was more. The vessel's gift, flowing through him. Not the grand transformation it could have offered, but something smaller, more personal, healing, one person at a time. As the day progressed, Marcus found himself drawn to others who were suffering. A woman with cancer, though she hadn't told anyone yet, Ranger led him to her. An elderly man contemplating suicide, isolated and forgotten. A child with autism, overwhelmed by the crowds. Each time a touch, a moment of connection, a small transfer of that healing light. By sunset, Marcus had helped dozens of people, each interaction draining but also fulfilling. Ranger guided him to those who needed it most, the dog's perception enhanced by their contact with the vessel. As fireworks exploded over the Grand Canyon, Marcus stood with a crowd of strangers who'd become connected through his touch. They watched the celebration not with patriotic fervor, but with something deeper, an understanding that they were part of something larger, older, more profound than nations or borders. His phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Rivera, this is Dr. Sarah Chen from the VA hospital in Phoenix. We've been getting calls all day. Veterans who were at the Grand Canyon saying they've been healed, saying you healed them. What's going on? Marcus looked at Ranger, who wagged his tail in what looked like approval. I think I found my purpose, Doctor. Can we meet? There's something I need to share. That night in his hotel room, Marcus documented everything he could remember. Not about the vessel or the uranium, but about the healing, the connection, the possibility of using whatever gift he'd been given to help others. Ranger lay beside him, occasionally alerting to something only he could perceive. Each time, Marcus would look out the window to see someone in distress. A drunk man about to drive, a woman having a panic attack, a teenager on the edge of making a terrible decision. Each time Marcus would go to them, Ranger leading the way, and offer help that went beyond words. By morning, the local news had picked up the story. Mysterious veteran and dog bring healing to Grand Canyon visitors. But Marcus was already gone, driving back to Phoenix with a new mission. Over the following weeks, Marcus established a pattern. He would visit VA hospitals, homeless shelters, addiction centers. Ranger would identify those most in need, and Marcus would spend time with them. Not preaching, not counseling, just being present, and somehow through that presence transmitting healing. The medical community was baffled. Veterans with treatment-resistant PTSD suddenly improved. Chronic pain vanished. Addictions loosened their grip. Brain injuries that should have been permanent showed remarkable improvement. Dr. Chen became his unofficial partner, documenting the healings, trying to find a scientific explanation. She never did, but she also stopped trying to explain it and started simply facilitating it, scheduling Marcus's visits to reach the most people. 3 months after the July 4th discovery, Marcus received another call, this time from someone identifying himself as Colonel Mitchell from a department of the government that didn't officially exist. We know about the canyon, Mr. Rivera, about what you found, what you chose. Marcus tensed, ready to run if needed, but Ranger was calm, which meant there was no immediate threat. We're not Axiom, the colonel continued. We're the ones who've been protecting sites like that for 70 years. Your grandfather worked with us, though he didn't know it. We'd like you to work with us too. Doing what? There are 7 sites in North America, 12 worldwide that we know of, each one hidden, each one protected by someone like you. But the guardians are aging, dying. We need new guides, people who've been chosen by the sites themselves. And if I refuse, then you continue doing what you're doing, and we continue protecting you while you do it. But together, we could do more. The world is approaching a tipping point, Mr. Rivera. Climate change, wars, societal collapse. The vessels might be humanity's only hope, but only if we're ready, only if we've evolved enough to use them wisely. Marcus looked at Ranger, who had moved to the door, tail wagging. The dog wanted to go, to find the next site, to continue the mission. Okay, Marcus said. Where's the next one? Yellowstone. There's been activity. Someone else has been chosen, but they need guidance. Can you leave today? Marcus was already packing. This was his purpose now. Not just the healing, but the guiding, helping others find what he'd found, make the choice he'd made. The drive to Yellowstone took 2 days. Ranger navigated more than Marcus, the dog seeming to know exactly where they were going. They arrived at Old Faithful just as it erupted, the geyser shooting steam and water into the clear Wyoming sky. A young woman stood near the viewing area, looking lost. She had a service dog too, a golden retriever that immediately oriented toward Ranger. "You're Sarah Walsh?" Marcus asked. She nodded, tears in her eyes. "My dog, Liberty. She keeps trying to lead me somewhere, but I'm scared. After my deployment, after what happened in Afghanistan, I don't trust myself anymore." "I know the feeling," Marcus said, "but sometimes the dogs know better than we do. Let them lead." Together they followed their dogs into the backcountry, to a place where the thermal features created a natural barrier to casual exploration. There, hidden behind a wall of steam, was another entrance, another chamber, another vessel. But this one was different. Where the Grand Canyon vessel had offered knowledge and healing, this one offered something else: connection. The ability to link minds, to share experiences, to build understanding between people who'd otherwise remain strangers. Sarah was terrified. Marcus understood. The choice to accept such power, even to help others, was overwhelming. "You don't have to," he told her. "You can walk away. The site will choose someone else eventually." "Did you think about walking away?" "Every second. Until I realized this wasn't about me. It was about everyone I could help." Sarah made her choice, accepting the gift with its restrictions and responsibilities. When they emerged, she could sense the emotions of everyone around her, could help them process trauma by truly understanding it. Together, Marcus and Sarah began building a network, not of guardians protecting sites, but of guides helping humanity prepare for what might come. Each site they found, each person chosen, added to their abilities and their understanding. The government department that didn't exist provided support, but not control. They understood that this had to grow organically, that forcing it would corrupt it. A year after that first July 4th, Marcus stood again at the Grand Canyon rim. But now he wasn't alone. 7 guides stood with him, each chosen by a different site, each carrying different gifts. Sarah with her empathic connections, James from the Yellowstone site with his ability to neutralize radiation, Lisa from the Appalachian site who could purify water with a touch, David from the Alaska site who could generate energy from nothing, Maria from the Florida site who could accelerate healing in others, and Thomas from the Hawaii site who could communicate across any distance instantly. They called themselves the New Guardians. Though their mission was different from the original 7, they weren't hiding the sites anymore, but preparing humanity to eventually access them, one healing at a time, one connection at a time, one small miracle at a time. Ranger, now showing grey in his muzzle, sat beside the assembled group of service dogs. Each dog had led their human to a site, had facilitated the choosing. There was something about the animals, their pure intent, their lack of ego, that made them perfect intermediaries between human and vessel. "My grandfather thought he was protecting the world by hiding this," Marcus said to the group, "but maybe he was just waiting for us to be ready to find it." "Are we ready?" Sarah asked. "No," Marcus admitted, "but we're getting closer. Every person we heal, every connection we facilitate, every small act of evolution we enable brings us closer." They watched the sunset paint the canyon in shades of fire. Somewhere below, the vessel waited, patient as the rocks around it. It would wait another generation if needed, or 100 generations, but Marcus hoped it wouldn't have to. The world was changing. Climate disasters were accelerating. Wars were becoming more desperate. Humanity was approaching a crisis point where it would either evolve or collapse. But now there was hope. 7 guides becoming 70, becoming 700. Each one chosen not by government or military, but by something older, wiser, that could see potential where others saw only damage. Marcus's phone buzzed. Another site had become active, this one in the Dakotas. Another veteran with a service dog was being led to something they didn't understand. "Road trip?" he asked Ranger. The dog was already heading for the truck, tail wagging. There was work to do. As they drove away from the canyon, Marcus thought about his grandfather, about the original 7 guardians who'd chosen to hide rather than exploit. They'd made the right choice for their time. Now Marcus and the new guides were making the right choice for theirs. The vessels were still hidden, their full power still locked away. But they were leaking deliberately, carefully, just enough to help humanity take the next step. And when humans were finally ready, when they'd evolved past the need for war and exploitation, the vessels would fully open, offering gifts that would transform the species. Or they would stay closed forever, monuments to a species that couldn't transcend its own nature. Marcus preferred to believe in the first option. Every healed veteran, every prevented suicide, every moment of connection and understanding proved that humans could be better, could deserve the gifts waiting in the hidden places. 5 years passed. The network grew. Not publicly. The world wasn't ready for that either. But quietly, guides worked in hospitals, disaster areas, war zones, always with their dogs, always subtle, always choosing help over power. Marcus aged, his body wearing down from the constant drain of channeling the vessel's energy. But his mind was clearer than it had ever been. The TBI that had once clouded his thoughts was completely gone. In its place was a clarity that let him see how all the guides were connected, how their work was slowly changing the species. Ranger was old now, moving slowly but still alert. Marcus knew their time together was ending, but he also knew that wasn't the end. The vessels recorded those who interacted with them. In a way, everyone who'd ever found a site lived on in them. On another July 4th, 6 years after the first discovery, Marcus brought Ranger back to the Grand Canyon. The dog could barely walk, but he insisted on making the journey to the hidden entrance. Inside the chamber, the vessel had partially emerged again. It pulsed with that familiar blue light. "It's time, isn't it, boy?" Marcus asked. Ranger wagged his tail once, then lay down beside the vessel, his breathing laborious but peaceful. The echo of Marcus's grandfather appeared again, but clearer this time, more solid. "He's earned his rest," the echo said. "As have you, when you're ready." "Not yet," Marcus said. "There's still work to do. There always will be, but others can take over. You've done your part." Marcus sat beside Ranger, hand on the dog's fur, as his faithful companion's breathing slowed, then stopped. But as it did, something remarkable happened. Ranger's form shimmered, became light, and merged with the vessel. And then, impossibly, Ranger was standing again, young and vital, but made of the same blue light as the echo. "Good boy," Marcus whispered. Ranger barked, a sound like distant thunder, and then faded. But Marcus could still feel him, part of the vessel now, part of the network that connected all the sites. When Marcus emerged from the chamber, a young woman was waiting with a German shepherd puppy. "Mr. Rivera, I'm Amanda. Colonel Mitchell sent me. This is Scout. He's special, like Ranger was." Marcus looked at the puppy, who looked back with eyes far too knowing for his age. "Hello, Ranger," Marcus said softly. The puppy's tail went wild. Not reincarnation exactly, but something like it. The vessels didn't just record, they recycled, sending back what was needed when it was needed. Marcus took Scout's leash, understanding that his work would continue just with a new partner, or perhaps the same partner in a new form. As fireworks lit up the sky over the Grand Canyon, Marcus stood with Scout, planning their next journey. There were more sites to find, more guides to train, more of humanity to prepare. The original 7 Guardians had hidden the secret. The new guides were slowly revealing it. And someday, when humanity was ready, the vessels would open fully, sharing gifts that would transform the species into something worthy of the stars that had sent them. But for now, there was just a man, a dog, and a mission that spanned generations. It was enough. It was everything. Marcus's phone rang. Another site, another chosen one, another chance to move humanity forward. "Ready for another adventure, Scout?" the puppy barked with Ranger's voice. They drove into the night, toward the next site, the next guide, the next small step in humanity's evolution. Behind them, the Grand Canyon held its secrets, patient as stone, eternal as hope. The work continued. The work would always continue, until humanity was ready for the gifts it had been offered, or until it proved it never would be. Marcus chose to believe in readiness, in evolution, in the possibility that humans could transcend their nature. Every healed soldier, every prevented tragedy, every moment of connection proved it was possible, and in the hidden places of the world, the vessels waited, patient as time itself, holding gifts beyond imagination for a species still learning to deserve them. The secret of the Grand Canyon was safe, but it was also spreading, one guide at a time, one healing at a time, one small miracle at a time. This was how the world changed, not all at once, but slowly, carefully, with dogs leading the way and broken people becoming whole enough to help others do the same. As the sun rose on another day, Marcus and Scout headed toward their next destination. There would always be another destination, another person to help, another step toward readiness. This was his grandfather's true legacy, not hiding the secret, but ensuring it would be found when the time was right, by the right people, for the right reasons. And as long as there were veterans with service dogs, as long as there were broken people willing to heal others, as long as there were those who chose service over power, the work would continue. The Grand Canyon kept its deeper secrets, but it had released just enough truth to change the world, one person at a time. And that, Marcus knew, was exactly as it should be. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel if this incredible story has opened your eyes to the mysteries that surround us. Share this with someone who needs to know that healing is possible, that secrets can become revelations, and that sometimes our dogs know exactly where to lead us. Thank you for joining us on this extraordinary journey. And remember, the greatest discoveries often come when we trust the instincts of those who love us most, even if they have 4 legs and can't explain why they're leading us into the unknown.